Okay, recording has started.
Sherry, are you able to mute and unmute?
I am. I'm good.
Perfect. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our October data reporting monthly meeting. We have a packed agenda for you today. I hope that you will find the information informative to help you as we navigate through data collection and reporting. First up on the agenda, we will have Nick from giving us some Ed Plan updates. Nick?
Hey all, thanks for having me. I'm going to spend a few minutes here running through some of the common trends we've seen with both Table 4 submissions and upcoming child count submissions. I know we're working with a smaller number of folks still on Table 4 items and a larger number of folks on child count items. So if you've already submitted a Zendesk ticket, thank you for doing that. We'll be getting to the child count ones shortly. I know you probably waited longer for a response there than you have on Table 4. We're prioritizing those right now, given the upcoming deadline, or the deadline that's just passed, I suppose. So I'm going to talk about the two core issues with Table 4 that we're seeing and how we're resolving them. I want to plug the article that exists for the Table 4, the exiting table inside of Zendesk. That has step-by-step instructions for how to deal with placement changes, modifying the exit reason, modifying the exit date. That article should have all of what I'm about to say inside of it. So if you're hearing me say something and you're like, well, I wish that were written down, everything I'm saying here, with maybe aside from a little language about PowerSchool, is inside of that article. So first band of items we're working with folks on in Zendesk are grade issues. And these will be highlighted by the report itself. So inside of the actual advanced report, it'll say, and it'll pull it into the errors tab if there's an issue with that grade student or that student's grade. And the way you resolve this depends on the student's enrollment status in your district. So if the student has been active in your district for at least one day this school year, starting on July 1st, 2025. So if they've attended your district this year, and EdPlan SC received them in the students feed this year, you can change their grade in PowerSchool, and that will flow through EdFi to EdPlan SC. That is only if they've attended this year. And I know with exiting table, a lot of these students have not attended school this year, right? They ended, their last day was before June 30th, 2025. So that's a different case. If the student exited before June 30th, 2025 and is not still in your LEA, the correction to the grade must be made manually inside of EdPlan SC, because going back and updating that in PowerSchool, since they're not attending your LEA in school year 25-26, that data does not automatically come in to EdPlan SC. So the takeaway is, if the student was active or is active in your district, maybe they transferred to regular ed last year, but they're still attending class in your district, change it to PowerSchool. If they exited last year and have not come back, that must be changed directly inside of EdPlan SC. I'm going to pause and see if folks have questions. I can't see the chat terribly well. So Carolyn, if someone from your team could help let me know if I can see anything in there about just grade issues. We're going to go to exit information next.
No great, no great issues or questions at the moment.
Okay, thank you. All right, and then the second most common thing, of course, we dealt with in table 4, the exiting table, are issues with exit data itself. So when I talk about exit data, for the vast majority of what I'm about to say, I'm referring to the student actually exiting your LEA, like no longer being in your district. At the very end, I'll talk about the transfer to regular education code and how that plays into the report and how you might need to correct things related to that. But for most of what I'm going to talk about, it relates to students leaving your LEA entirely. So the first case we're seeing is that the exit event has the right reason, but it's on the wrong day. So maybe a student does have an exit event. That exit event does say graduated with a high school diploma, but it's on July 4th, 2025 instead of June 4th, 2025. And we know we need it to be on June 4th to be counted in this year exiting table. To change this, folks in your district can just directly change the date from the student history page. So as long as if you click on the details pencil and that exit school system event has the right reason, all you need to do is adjust the date inside of the system. You can do this by just clicking on the date. It'll pop up a calendar picker, correct the date and click save. Then EdPlan SC will see that date being in the end of school year 24-25 rather than the beginning of school year 25-26, and the report will pick up that change. One of the big issues we've seen is those exit dates that might have strayed across July 1st, 2025. If they were last year's exits, they need to be moved back manually. All right, so that was if the event has the correct reason, but the wrong date. So now I'm going to talk about the reverse. So if the exit event is on the right day, but it's the wrong reason. The most common thing here is we got the exit reason of unknown from Ed5 via PowerSchool. There's a lot of reasons this might have happened, but the core takeaway is this is how to fix a student who has the right exit day, but the wrong exit reason. To do this, all you need to do is use the modified exit reason. The exit date doesn't have to change. And then to change the reason, you just change it directly in EdPlan SC from that drop down. The options are like move known to be continuing, received a certificate. They're the federal values exactly. So if the exit event is on the right day with the wrong reason, use modified exit reason. All right, if both are incorrect, so if the student is inactive in your LEA in EdPlan SC, they're in the inactive student section, but the exit date is incorrect and the exit reason is incorrect, you will use both of those strategies. So you'll go to student history to change the date to be the correct date. And then you'll go to the modified exit reason menu to change the exit reason to the correct exit reason. So if the date is wrong, change it in student history. If the reason is wrong, change it in the modified exit reason page. Point I made just a moment earlier, but it's an important one. Retroactive PowerSchool exit updates do not flow into EdPlan SC for the exact same date. So I'll use June 5th, 2025 as an example. If EdPlan SC received a student's exit on June 5th, 2025 with the reason unknown, and then the next day we received an exit event for June 5th, 2025 with the reason graduated, that does not automatically update the exit event. When a student exits EdPlan SC for the first time, that reason is like stamped in stone like a fossil. It takes the first exit reason for that date. If it gets another date, a second date, it'll make a new event, but it will not go back and update the exit reason inside of an already existing event. So that's where the modified exit reason must be used. I know we've talked to a lot of folks who updated that in PowerSchool, which might be a good idea for other record keeping, but EdPlan SC does not consume that a second time. It only gets it the first time. All right, my last bullet on table 4, and then I'll look for questions and I'll give my voice a quick break. So the difference for what I'm talking about now is those were all PowerSchool Ed5 based exits. So the student was served and then they actually left your LEA. The other case is the student is still in your LEA, but they exited special education, so to speak, with a non-qualifying event, like a revocation of consent to provide services. They're reevaluated and determined non-eligible. And a number of events like that can have a student counted in the exit table when they're still present in your district, but no longer being served. When this happens, EdPlan SC, the report looks for those events. So if it sees a revocation of consent event after the latest IEP, the report understands that there was an IEP and the consent to provide those services was revoked. This student needs to be labeled transfer to regular ed. The biggest issue we've seen here are with dates. If the revocation is after or before the IEP event, EdPlan SC interprets that as there having been a revocation, and then there's another plan written. So the ordering of the revocation or the non-eligibility determination is very important to make sure that the report picks it up correctly. We have not seen as many issues with this. That's relatively lower in scale. All right, I'm going to pause and talk about child count next, but Carolyn and team, I want to pass to you to see if you have anything to add or clarify, or if we have any questions in the chat.
No questions in the chat. I don't have any, well, I have questions, but not for this platform.
Got it.
Okay.
All right. And now I'm going to briefly discuss child count. Again, I want to highlight that it is likely that your child count tickets have received less timely responses than the Table 4 ones as we're prioritizing that submission. Carolyn, can you really quickly speak to the submission date for child count and how that overlaps with the count date?
So the students that are included on your child count report are students that are enrolled and receiving special education services as of October 28th. So your submission is now November 14th. We've given an extra week because of the Table 4. So we just extended that submission to November 14th. So if you have a student that enrolls on October 29th, that student should not be included, nor should students who no longer qualify, or if there's a revocation of consent, those students should not be on your report. Only active students.
Thanks, Carolyn.
You're welcome.
All right, and then I'll briefly cover the three broad trends we've seen with these tickets so far, and I know we'll continue to receive more and work with folks on those, so these might change, but these are the three most common things we've seen and that we're working with folks on. The first, far and away, is the error check that says LRE grade and age mismatch. So what this error check is looking for is that the placement value that's on the report from the student's latest IEP event matches their acceptable grade age combination. So what I mean by this is using the placement category inside regular class 80% more or more of the day. That is something that's valid for students who are 6 to 21 or 5-year-olds who are in kindergarten. But if that is saved with an event for a student who is 3 years old in your system, there's going to be a red arrow that flags and says this student's age and grade do not match with their LRE value. There's two really common things we've seen that are driving this. The first relates to the none placement value. So I know we've talked about that value a lot throughout Table 4, and it will be relevant again during child count. The most common cause of that placement value reading as none is the comparable services statement and not having the placement questions answered prior to finalization. But if that none value is present, the LRE grade mismatch is going to flash because there is no valid match for none. None is not valid for 3-year-olds, none is not valid for 5-year-olds, none is not valid for 21-year-olds. So when you see the LRE grade and age mismatches, a good first thing to check is the nones. That's probably a large category of those errors that are being flagged. The second category we've seen most often reflected is kindergarten students. So if you look at all students that receive this error inside of your data and you would like sort it by grade or count it by grade, kindergarten is by far the most high category for this case. And that relates to the question on the placement page inside of EdPlan SC. The question on the placement page says, how old will the student be in October? And if students were having spring IEPs written maybe as a 5-year-old in pre-K or a 4-year-old not yet in kindergarten, they are going to have potentially answered that question as of today. So rather than answering as of October, they would have said as of today, they receive their services in another service provider location less than 10 hours. But now today, as of October 28th, 2025, they are in kindergarten, which means that that LRE value no longer matches their age grade classification. So that is by far the second most common trend we're seeing. It's either placement is none or kindergarten students, newly enrolled kindergarten students this fall, still having pre-K or 3 to 5 placement values. I'm going to pause for a second. See, Sherry, I know I was talking about early childhood students. Carolyn, do you have anything to add to that in terms of the trends we've seen? I'm going to talk about DD age mismatch and grade errors next, but LRE grade mismatch, anything to add there? And Sherry, I'm seeing the question in the chat. I don't know if you're available to speak, but to speak to the upcoming change to the system that should help resolve what's being asked there.
I think Nico Paget had a question, Nick. Is there a solution in the near future to correct the issue in the system, given that the current IEP does not allow you to select 2 LRE for pre-K students transitioning to kindergarten during the life of their IEP?
Yeah, it's a great question. And Sherry, if you're able to come off mute, I'd welcome you to add in your thoughts here related to the upcoming change to Ed Plan SC. The placement section is changing. It won't be until after this child count, so this will be applicable once that change is released going forward. But it'll allow you to indicate many different service periods, or right now the system just asks how old will they be in October. But in the coming version of the system, and I believe it's in the December release, I need to check that to be 100% sure. You'll be able to indicate multiple periods of time, kind of like the placement calculator does on the bottom, where it goes into different chunks of time. You'll be able to set aside different chunks of time for a student and say what their placement was then. So once that's released, you could say in spring, they were in a service provider location, and in fall, we anticipate they will be in regular class 80% or more. I know I just saw Sherry drop the call, so I think she was having connection difficulties, but anything you'd add to that, Carolyn? Upcoming system change will help.
I think that's good, Nick, but we're gonna defer the questions because I can see it spiraling down a rabbit hole. So
Sure.
it's just to allow time to get through the presentation, because I think some of these things will be answered in the presentation itself. I would say that the LRE, at least on I think for both cases, whether it be child count or for the table 4, it's the placement tile that's missing. And so districts are looking at the IEP or the comp services and see that the LRE statement is there, but that
Sure.
placement tile is missing. So I think that's one of the biggest confusion in this process. So we may need to do a Zendesk article on that particular thing, because I think that's what's causing what's going on here. So okay. So we see the questions, but we're gonna defer it because it's gonna spiral. I know it will spiral, so we'll catch all the questions on the end. So team, if you guys would just kind of monitor the chat to make sure that we are answering. And Yolanda, if you are able to respond to the questions in the chat, go ahead and take care of that as we go through the presentation, okay? All right, Nick, I'll let you finish.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Carolyn. 2 other quick notes. Each of these are smaller in number than the LRE grade mismatch. That's the biggest thing we're supporting right now. The second most common is DD age mismatch. So I think folks might have seen this a lot at the beginning of the report, where they were seeing students who were labeled as DD, but their age indicated that they were not allowed to be classified as DD. I know we've worked through most of these, but if you're still getting that error, that means that the student said their plan says they're being served under DD beyond the allowable age. So that's something we've been helping support, but not many of those left from what we can see. And then the final thing relates to grade errors. All of the explanation of how to fix it is the exact same as what I said for table 4, except for child count, most of these students probably are enrolled in your district, right? So you'll be able to change almost all of these in PowerSchool. The biggest thing we're seeing is XG classified students. XG is not a valid grade level, so it'll have the same problem as the non-placement value. XG isn't valid for either sets of placements, so it's going to throw an error. And in that case, we need to make sure XG is corrected in the source. All right. That is the bottom of what I had, Carolyn.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Likewise, Nick, if you see anything in the chat that you can answer as we go through the PowerPoint, take care of those things. All righty, just wanted to give an overall status update of the current reports. We still do not have the 24-25 assessment data just yet to share with you. But as of today, the 4AB, that has been corrected and placed in ADT for you. Our COAS is completed, and you'll find those results in ADT, indicator 8. The clarifications for indicator 11 is actually due tomorrow. And Andrea, I didn't change it on the slide, but we were able to get the clarifications in ADT for indicator 12. And we do have a slide to talk about what the correction ledger looks like for those of you, and that is due on November 7th, your clarifications. The post-secondary outcome is still with the vendor. We're waiting for them to get those results back to us. Table 5 is completed with the exception of 2 LEAs, if I'm not mistaken. And table 4, okay. I know that some of you still have corrections to make, and I spoke with Peter about this on yesterday. It is his expectation that the data is corrected before you submit, so that will at least give you through tomorrow to get those corrections done so that you can submit by Friday or end of week. Okay. Just wanted to tell you a couple of things to double check on your table 4. Right now, we do recognize that any information that appears on the error tab also appears on your submission tab. But we do look at the grade level, the race, gender, the age as of child count. So if you have your students' ages should be 14 through 21 as of the child count date, the primary disability, placement, and outcome reason and code. We do want you to pay attention to the fact that the PowerSchool exit reason or the Ed Plan exit reason will populate the outcome reason and outcome code. So you could potentially see a blank under either of those columns, but we want you to focus on whether there is an actual outcome code populated. So based on what's in PowerSchool or what's in Ed Plan will give you an outcome reason or outcome reason code. So either one of those places will populate or should populate the outcome reason code field. On your need to modify tab, this page should be blank. It is the expectation of this office that that page is blank prior to submission. All errors must be corrected. Unresolved students on the need to modify page will be reported as dropouts, and I don't think you guys want that. I do encourage everyone to check their reports. And Yolanda did send an email out on yesterday to those districts who still had table 4 errors on their report for you to go in and make those corrections. On the error tab, these are primarily due to placements and grade level errors that needs to be corrected, and particularly the XG as Nick just stated, and any students that has an elementary grade level. We did remove the criteria for middle schoolers because middle schoolers could very well be impacted by that. So we did lift that restriction for middle school grade levels, but definitely elementary school grade levels should not appear on this report. And so there is an extension through Friday. And so how that looks, in order for you to submit on Friday with no errors, that means that all errors or issues should be resolved by close of business tomorrow so that you can log in successfully on Friday morning and submit with no issues. Okay. We do recognize and understand that there are some districts that are still working with support and they are keeping us updated on those issues daily. For the indicator 12 legend, just to talk about that, and I know the list keeps growing and growing and growing and growing, but we just kind of bottlenecked with all the extensions. So this is kind of what happens as we continue to extend. It bottlenecks with the clarifications in the current year processes. So the legend for indicator 12C to B corrections. So if you see if the deadline's met, parental delay, no parental consent, or late referrals, there's no additional action required for those. If it says penalty missing narrative, that means that we need more information. You need to give us some details about why this penalty exists, what occurred to help us assess whether it's due to the LEA or due to the parent. penalty invalid outcome code. That means that either you have selected that it was on time, but the actual, when we look at the dates and the child's age or the IEP meeting date, it is actually overdue. So we need the correct code, and we are asking that you enter that information. I want to under the column that says district comment. Just type in the information there. Once we populate it into our spreadsheet, it will give us the correct information. So we just ask that you add your comments into the column that says district comment or district response. There, in some cases, we have an eligibility date, or we can see an eligibility date, but there's no IEP start date or there's no SPED exit date. So whatever the outcome is or what led to the outcome, we just need to see that information populated to help us determine whether a penalty should be assessed or not. Once again, missing a lot of entries with missing IEP begin date or SPED exit date. We're not really sure what to do. So if you could just give us some insight in the district comment field, that would be great. Penalty duplicated record. We just need to see the PowerSchool enrollment and withdrawal date to help us decide where this child should be reported. Penalty inconsistent timeline. So basically that means that either the consent is before the meeting date, or the date that you have entered is before the child's birthday, probably a typo. But once that information is actually corrected, is the event overdue? And if it's overdue, we do need an explanation. And if you could just add that explanation under the district comment field, that would be great. Just remember that all corrections must be made at the source for these reports. Because we're at clarification, you are expected to make those corrections in the system. We are not going back to pull, but if we should pull this report from the system for data request, we expect that that information is corrected. But for clarifications, your corrections are made in the spreadsheet. If you are talking a final submission, those are actually done in the system prior to submitting. All right, next, fall admin. We actually have 2 dates for fall admin, and we shared that information with you guys, November 6th or November 12th. We do have information that will be applicable to district. So if more than one individuals are coming from your district, try to partner with the person coming from your district. It's not required, but we do, it would be best, because there will be some questions and it will be a collaboration based on your district process, but it's not required. Okay. All right, moving on to child count. As I stated earlier, we did extend the submission date to November 14th. Just as I stated earlier, this is a submission based on the students enrolled and receiving special education services as of October 28th. October 28th is not your submission date. It is just your count date, which means that the students included on your report is enrolled and receiving special education services as of that date. Our enriched districts, we do want to remind you that your reports are submitted via ADT. If you are an Ed Plan district, we expect you to submit via Ed Plan. Once the reports are done and completed, OSIS data team will tell you the number to certify your totals. And data from your child count and placement reports are the data that's used to populate indicators 5 and 6. Okay. Once again, we talked about the DD students. Just basically, the main thing about the DD students is that If they are 10 or older in your district, they should have been reevaluated. I know that there is an outstanding issue of some that have been reevaluated and it is not reading that. We are in conversations about that. But just know that all students that are 10 or older and DD is their primary disability, those students needs to be reevaluated prior to being reported on prior to your submission. In the event that you are not able to rectify those, they will be removed from your child count report, okay? The information that I have highlighted in blue, that's language from our policy that we are actually in conversations about. If you look at what's highlighted in blue, it does not impact the 10-year-olds. The 10-year-olds still will need to be reevaluated in order to be included on the report. So that's just some insight about that and why it's highlighted in blue. Okay. Okay, some of the issues that we see for child count, if the student has an age of 2, 22, or 23 as of the child count date, that is an error. They will not be included on the report. If the race is displaying 07 or blank, that is an error. Grade is P2, XG or blank is an error. The placement is blank or none. The primary disability is blank. Placement, age, grade mismatch. Nick spoke about that earlier. And I do have a slide to reference that to help process why it's an error. And so I'll talk about that in a few minutes, but please ensure that the state ID, school name, school ID are never blank. And if you do have instances on your report where it's blank, we've been trying to catch those, but we are talking technology and sometimes things happen. So if you should see that on your report, please submit a Zendesk ticket to help resolve those issues. As well as if you see any multi-value errors appear in your report, submit a Zendesk ticket for those as well. Okay. As it pertains to the grade levels, a -3 in PowerSchool is converted into EdPlan as a P2, and that must be corrected in PowerSchool if the student is still active. And we're talking child count, so they should still be active in PowerSchool, and that correction must be made in PowerSchool in order for it to appear on your report. -9 is XG in EdPlan, just to kind of give you some references as to where it's coming from. So you know the source. And so for grade level, PowerSchool is our source system. So these corrections need to be made in PowerSchool. The 13th, AE, adult education, first, second, third, fourth year after 12th grade and graduated. Those will be auto changed to grade 12 and EdPlan as seen on the report for this year. We're having additional conversations about the flow of that, but for right now, for this report, those will be auto converted to 12th grade for child count report. The placement age grade mismatch. And so I changed up this slide a little bit just because I wanted you to be able to process. So we're talking child count report. So our child count report date for this year is October 28th. So on October 28th of 2025, if the student age is 3, 4, and 5, and the grade level is pre-K, they should only have one of these LREs that falls underneath the early childhood, right? So remember, age 3, 4, 5, and grade level pre-K on October 28th can only have one of these reasons. And if they do not, then you need to follow these steps to correct that in the system. Students that have an ISP, if they are actually enrolled in your building, they should have an IEP. And if they are in a private school setting or homeschool setting, you need to follow the decision tree to determine what the appropriate LRE code is. And if I said that wrong, I know Sherry will get me on the end. So thank you, Sherry, in advance. For our school age population, if they are age 5, 31, there's a typo, I need to correct that. Ages 5 through 21, not 31. And the grade level is K through 12. These are the permitted school age LRE values for those students. So ask yourself the question, is this student age 5 through 21 on October 28th, and they are in kinder through grade 12? They should have one of the permitted school age LRE. For our students who have ISPs and are school age, their LRE should be parentally placed in private schools. Okay. I hope that helps to clarify some of the issues that we're seeing. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. Okay. So we did want to kind of give some scenarios like we did before. So scenario 1, the student age is 5 and the grade is pre-K. The student is in the hospital. Which placement is incorrect? If you could put it in the chat, that would be great. See B, I see B, I see C, I see D. Okay. Hospital homebound. Hospital homebound is only applicable for school age students. Remember, the student is 5 and then the grade level is pre-K. They cannot be homebound or hospital as the LRE placement for the student. Residential facility, home, and A, B, and D are all applicable for a student that is 5 and in pre-K. Next up, student is currently 4 years old in pre-K. You complete the IEP for kindergarten in May for the next school year. What placement group should this student be? We have A, school age. We have B, early childhood. C, parentally placed private school. Or D, separate class. What is the correct placement group for this child? Okay, I see A. Good. That is correct. The student will be 5K, so they are school age population, okay? Scenario 3, I gave you the answer. The student is in District A and receives services in District B. Should the student be reported in District A or B? And I gave the answer, so. For this situation, we really need more information to determine where the student should be reported. Is there a multi-district agreement in place? Did they actually state where the student should be reported? Otherwise, the student will be reported in the district enrolled in receiving services, special education and related services on the child count date. Okay. True or false? Why are my answers coming up? I don't know why. Okay. True or false? Robin was 21 years old on the first day of school, but turned 22 on October 2nd. This student should be included on the child count report. True or false? A or B? A. Okay. Got 2 A's in the chat. Uncertain? B, B, B. Okay. All right, this is false. Remember, the child count report only covers ages 3 through 21 as of the child count date. Okay. True or false? Your advanced report has the word none in the placement field. Should this fix be in Ed Plan prior to your submission? True or false? A. It's actually A, but my true false is off, but the correct answer is A. You should correct in Ed Plan prior to your submission. Yolanda, we missed that. All right, thank you for that. We just wanted to add some scenarios in there to help you kind of process the questions and how it is interpreted and reported here at the state level for the child count report. Just a couple of things. Before submitting, double check the following. You want to check your district name code, school name and code, the student ID, student's name, the multilingual status and code, report type. That you should never have blanks in those fields. Your grade level, just to remind you, no blanks, no -9s, no -3s or XGs. For primary disability, no blanks. DD should be reevaluated by the child count date, and the placement codes should not have the word none or no blanks as well. Okay. Double check the child's age as of the child count date. So you want to look at the age and grade level to determine the appropriate placement code. And the gender, we should not have blanks or an N. Those are not valid. Once again, just a reminder that the submission is extended to the 14th of February. And we're going to turn it over to Sherry to talk about the LRE and some early childhood process to help you through this. Sherry?
Yes, thank you, Carolyn. Good morning, everybody. We are going to take just a few minutes to go through each of the early childhood indicators. There are 3, and just want to orient you as to where and how to enter the data into EdPlan SC so that it is then correct for reporting. So indicator 6, those are early childhood placements. So that is very different from school age placement, because school age placement, you're talking about how much time a child is in general ed. But you've got to switch gears when you're thinking about preschool, because there we're thinking about where is the child receiving their special education and related services. Okay. So there are instructions in Zendesk for how to enter that information correctly in the placement tile in the EdPlan SC. However, I want to bring just a few things up to clarify. When you are in the placement tile, you always want to answer that question, how old will the child be on that October child count date? Okay, so if a child is going to be in preschool for the first part of the IEP, and that IEP is going to span, and then they're going to be in kindergarten, answer it as to where they will be on the October child count date. At this point, until changes are made in the system, you will document any other LRE in the prior written notice. Okay, so always answer it as to where they will be on that 4th Tuesday in October. What is really nice about the system is it really has that decision tree that we've used for years embedded. So you answer a question and then it populates the next question accordingly. Carolyn, do you mind going to the next slide? I want to talk through the decision tree a little bit. We have a couple of decision trees. This is the one that I prefer, just because at the bottom you'll see it talks about what constitutes a regular early childhood program and what constitutes a special ed program. And sometimes districts don't realize that regular early childhood programs are not, they encompass things outside of your district. So of course your district CERT-up, your district local funded preschool programs, but it also includes children who are in Head Start, who are in First Steps 4K, child cares, private kindergartens and preschools. Okay, so it's very different from your school age LRE. And you always answer that question at the top first. Does the child attend a regular early childhood program? Do they attend any of those things on that list? And if you have a question, if it's not something on that list, but you think it might be a regular early childhood program, email me, touch base, and we'll talk through it together. Always answer that question first, and then it will take you down to subsequent questions to help you determine the appropriate LRE. Just a little side note on ISPs. If a child is preschool, they shouldn't have an ISP because ISPs are for children who are parentally placed in homeschool or private school, and that starts at school age. Okay, so your your preschool children should have an IEP. You should be able to answer these questions on the decision tree and come up with their appropriate placement. Okay. Now, Carolyn, if you'll go to the next slide, this is an updated decision tree. I just like the old one because it has those definitions. That's it. But either one you use, it's going to get you to the right place. Okay. Suzanne, we've got these available in several different places. You will find them in, I know you were in New Directors, you'll find them in that folder, but I can also give these to Carolyn to put in the resources section of your folder, Carolyn, for resources for your data folks. Now, we also had a question about placements in EdPlan. Are there plans to upgrade the system, to make changes to the system so that you can enter more than one LRE? And yes, everybody can cheer right now because in the December updates, you will have an option to enter more than one LRE. Okay, not quite there yet. We didn't want to make any changes prior to October child count and throw anybody off. But with the December update, you will be able to enter more than one LRE. Any questions about indicator 6 before we talk about COAS and indicator 7? Okay, well, we will move on to indicator 7. And that is all childhood outcomes summary. And again, there is a Zendesk article that gives information on how to enter that COAS data, but just want to give you a brief orientation. COAS is not found in the IEP tiles. It is under the student's documents. If you go to the documents tab and you choose IEP, ISP from that left-hand side, child outcome summary is on the top left. So you'll click that and you'll create a draft. And then you'll go through the various prompts. Carolyn, if you don't mind going to the next slide. And I'm not going to take you through it all today, but basically you'll just put whether it's an entry or exit, and then you'll start populating the data for the 3 outcomes. I do want to go ahead and clarify a few things. That entry COAS should ideally be completed as a team when you are doing that eligibility determination, that initial determination to determine that a child meets eligibility for special education services. However, if for whatever reason that cannot happen, it should be completed no later than 15 business days from the eligibility determination, or let's talk about transfers a little bit, within 30 days if the child has transferred to the LEA. I know there have been lots of questions about transfers in the COAS. If a child transfers from a district in state that is using EdPlan SC, that COAS data will transfer with their record. Okay, so you shouldn't have to do anything if it's going from an EdPlan district to an EdPlan district. If a child is transferring from a district in state that is not using EdPlan SC, or if they are transferring from out of state and the previous LEA provides that entry COAS, just simply enter that data into EdPlan. Okay, if they do not provide it, then you will need to enter the entry coast within 30 days. Okay. Does that help with some of the questions that you've had about transfers? If you have any questions, please feel free to put those in the chat. Also, an exit coast should be completed no sooner than 3 weeks before the end of the school year prior to the child starting kindergarten. Okay, doesn't matter age, disability. If they are getting ready to go into kindergarten, go ahead and do that exit coast in that 3-week time frame before they are going to be done with that previous school year. So we ask that you not do it sooner than 3 weeks because we want to capture as much progress as possible. Okay, so that's why that time frame is there. If a child is 5 and they are not going to kindergarten for whatever reason, they're remaining in a preschool setting. I know that rarely happens, but it may happen occasionally. Go ahead and do that exit coast prior to the 6th birthday. Okay. If a child, the other big question we get is if a child is going to receive less than 180 days of service, an entry nor an exit is required. That will flag. A big thank you to Nick for working out a flag in EdPlan SC and the reporting. That those should flag if they've received less than 180 days of service, so you wouldn't have to enter that just entry date and exit date like you used to. If you're using EdPlan, that 180-day flag will be in place. All right, and these are just some more screenshots of how to enter the data. Basically, you just put the different team members' names, their roles. You indicate how you obtained the information from the parent, from the family. Typically, that information is incorporated into the assessment for your initial placements. And for exits, you probably get it in a team meeting or you send a questionnaire to the parent. All right, next slide. And then these are some screenshots of how you enter the ratings, how and where. So we have 3 areas, and this is just a quick snippet of the positive social emotional skills. And really, you are just putting in the rating for entry, the rating for exit, and then your supporting evidence. If it is an exit, you see that number 3 in the red circle, you have to indicate whether or not they have made progress. Hopefully you have seen progress. Typically, the only times you don't see progress is if a child may have a degenerative condition of some sort. And then you describe the progress that they made. And you do the same thing for all 3 areas. Very simple. And then the next slide. I want to talk briefly about how to complete the coast with Fidelity. So this is a decision tree that's really helpful for your staff as they're completing the coast to know, to have an idea of how to rate the student. But we also have some additional resources available for coast. We have them on our website if you go to OSIS in Early Childhood. We also have created a course in our LMS, in our learning management system. That course includes some federal modules as well as statewide modules. We've got some specific information that aligns with EdPlan data entry, and it culminates in a knowledge check. And if your staff passes that knowledge check, you can rest assured that they can complete a coast with Fidelity. So I just want to encourage you to check out those additional resources. Use that decision tree, encourage your staff to take that course, and they also get recertification credits. So that's a win-win. And then when you finish, you will create draft document, you'll view it, make sure everything in there is accurate. And then next slide. Then you can go ahead and create your final, okay? And you will have your final coast document created. It will then appear in your documents, in the student's documents. Okay, any questions about coast? All right, now I will quickly go to BabyNet. This would, oh, let's see, Brandy, question regarding exit codes. Exit codes should be completed at least 3 weeks prior to the end of the school year. Brandy, the 3 weeks is really a guideline that we would recommend. Do it somewhere within that time frame. There is not a hard start, hard stop. We just recommend that you not do it prior to 3 weeks, because typically if a child's receiving 3 weeks of services, you're going to see some more progress. So we want those ratings as accurate as possible. And let's see, Suzanne, a student being placed in 4K in the fall or spring does not need a code since they will not receive 180 days of service. That's correct, Suzanne. If they are not going to receive 180 days of service, we do not have to have an entry or exit codes. If you do it, if you feel better doing it, you can do it, and we'll exclude that at the state level, but it is not required.
Sherry, I think maybe that's the part of, because we're going to get all of the data on the students. So we do need to see the dates at a minimum, so that we can exclude them for less than 180 days of services, or am I off base with that?
So Nick, thanks to Nick, he's put a flag in. So they
Okay.
don't have to do that anymore. Right.
Okay.
So you'll
Okay.
see that flag. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's talk about BabyNet, and I promise I'll answer the question about BabyNet as well. So BabyNet is super simple. Okay, again, we've got directions in Zendesk, but if you go to the student info tab, scroll down to BabyNet, click that, and then the next slide will show you that form and what it looks like. Okay, you will click yes or no as to whether or not it's a BabyNet referral. And I'm sure if you are taking the time to fill out this form, then it's going to be a yes, it'll be a BabyNet referral. You'll put in the transition notification date. And we can go to, there we go. And then you will see the additional fields to complete. You may or may not have a BabyNet tracking number provided to you. If you don't, you can leave that blank. And then you'll have your transition conference date. You can list who from Part B was at that transition conference, the Part C agency name, you can put that in as well. And then the next slide is going to show you what you really want to see. And these are the BabyNet factors. So if this is not just a simple, straightforward transition, if there were some things, if something happened that prohibited you from completing that IEP prior to the 3rd birthday, you would check that here. So let's say the parent failed to produce the child for the evaluation. You would indicate that checkbox. Let's say you received the referral, not within 90 days of that, before the 3rd birthday, indicate that here. Anything that would prohibit you from completing that transition in a timely fashion, you would indicate that and then describe it in the comments. Okay, what you enter here is what populates for your indicator 12 reporting. So if children aren't showing up in your indicator 12 report, it's probably because you haven't completed the BabyNet form. Question about a print-friendly version of the BabyNet data. Yes, we are looking at updates to the system to make the BabyNet an action, okay? So that you could finalize it, and then you could possibly print a document if you wanted to print a document for the file. That's not something we would require, but we've had districts request that. So that is in the works. That should be coming. One last thing I wanted to share with you is Skippy is starting a professional learning community in November, all about early childhood data. I would encourage you and your staff to join and participate if you're able to do so. And Carolyn has uploaded the flyer into the resources folder for you all. And I think that's it for me, Carolyn. I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Sherry, for that information. I was just kind of checking the chat to make sure that we got all the questions answered, and there's a couple that's still pending. So if you guys could just bear with us for about 15 minutes, after we hope to get all of that squared away for you. Just a couple of reminders, the students on your child count report are students enrolled and receiving services as of October 28th. And that's students with IEPs and ISPs that should be included. October 28th, it is not your submission date, it is your count date. Submission date is Friday, November 14th. We have extended the Table 8 MOECEIS report to Friday, December 19th. We will share that link with you. You will no longer have to do the Excel spreadsheet. We will have that in a form stack form, survey form for you to complete and submit to us. What else we have? Once again, just a reminder, when it's time for you to submit your report, you are only submitting the submission page. Remember, do not send emails to us with students' names in it. I know that you're frustrated and you're thinking you just want us to see it. Put that in ADT and let us know, and we can get that information from there. So please do not email that to us. That is a agency violation, actually a state violation. And your submission represents your data being valid and reliable as of your submission date. And remember that there's a 24-hour delay, so any corrections made today, you will not be able to verify that until tomorrow. So be mindful of that as you're making corrections in your system. If you experience any issues or any errors, please submit a Zendesk ticket with the student's state ID number so that they can try to replicate that at their end. In rich districts, submit your reports via ADT and let us know. And we're still waiting on the final outcome for indicator 14. Once again, to access ADT, we are the OSIS data role. And in order for you to get your discipline reports, you will need access to the incident management coordinator role. And you'd have to, this is what we use to secure data securely to and fro districts and the state agency. Consult your technology department or your IT coordinator in your district for access to ADT. For the deans, we send our communications to the special education directors, secondary contacts, and the data managers. So if you are not in deans, once again, talk with your district's technology coordinator for access to those roles. It is not an issue to have multiple people with that role, with these roles. But these are the roles that we send out our information to. Likewise, if folks are no longer in your district, have these roles removed because they will still continue to receive the emails as long as they're still in your district, okay? We did want to talk a little bit about the systemic verification checks that normally happens in November. We will not do that. We need to take a pause so that we could level set and get truly acclimated for the 25-26 reporting year. As well as our November and December meetings falls on Christmas and Thanksgiving. So we will have a meeting in between, which will be the second Thursday in December, which is December 11th. We also have the two dates of fall admin that happens on November 6th and the 12th. Okay. As always, please feel free to share this information with anyone who needs it. We don't mind giving the information. And I do want to turn to the chat to make sure that we've answered all of the questions that are pending out there. And Nyako had a question. We did get a similar question to this about the placement codes in the future. We're having discussions. We don't have a solid answer for you just yet, but we are in conversations about that, or will be in conversations about that. Kelly asked if the comp statement is current, do you need to ignore these errors? You cannot ignore the errors. Basically, what that means is that the placement tile for the comp services for the LRE, where the report is pulling from, that is missing. So it is reading as none. So you have to follow the steps that was provided for you for the table 4 Zendesk, the article that we provided to you to correct those statements. So the place that the report is pulling from, the placement tile is actually missing from the system, from the report. So you have to go in and add that in and submit your data. Okay. Let's see, how can you fix 5K students with an amendment? Nick, can you take that question? Or Sherry, or one of you able to answer that question? How can you fix 5K students with an amendment? I'm assuming they're Karen's referencing the LRE placement.
Okay, I'm looking for her question. So having teachers, yes. So if if your district is in agreement to do it this way, you could do that as an amendment without a meeting and correct that LRE in the IEP. Does that help answer your question for that one?
Moving on to the next question, is the fix for those with non-placement values the same as the table 4 corrections? And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say yes, simply because in one instance the student is active, the other student is inactive, but the process is primarily the same. Which can be corrected. Nick, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure if Nick is still with us or not, or Sherry may be able to answer, but the article addresses how to correct placement for active and inactive students, correct?
Correct. It should all be in that article.
Okay. If a student is in 4K and will be in kinder during the life of the IEP, which LRE should be selected? And the LRE for child count that we're looking for is, what is the child's LRE going to be on the child count date? So depending on when you're doing that IEP, think about the child count date and what that placement value should be for that child on that child count date. Correct, Sherry?
Yes.
Want to make sure, I'm sorry. It looks like Yolanda knows we're answering some questions. I'm just looking at the questions that I didn't see answered right away. Jenny, I see your question about mandating to serve them but can't count them. That's a question above me, so I will, yeah, we only report ages 3 through 21 for our reports.
Carolyn, there was
Yes.
one, and I think this may be in reference to the one that Sherry's already tried to answer with George. And I think he had a question about, and Sherry, you answered it. It's just that I just want to expound on it a little more, where you're having to go in and, if a parent decides, hey, I don't want my child, I don't want to give consent, but then they later change their mind. The reason why you're having to go in to do it the first time is so that both you won't have your record showing overdue, because if you don't close it out, if you don't close that record out, that second date will supersede the earlier date showing you as late, which would incur a penalty. So that's why we're having you close that out and not have that record linger.
I do want to say that I know some of you are saying that the information is in the system. The information may be in the system, but it's not configurable to come over onto the reports. So it is requiring us to take additional steps until it can go through development and get it updated to appear on the report. So although it may be in the system, we do need your help to rectify it until we're able to get the changes through development. I think we have them all. I don't know if I missed any. If I've missed any, please feel free to come off of mute and ask the question.
Hi, this is Anna Gibson. Can you hear me?
Very lightly.
Is this better?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I have noticed in pulling some of the reports, like the child count report, when we're looking for nones or blanks, I have noticed that a lot of hours are due to students who have transferred in, and we just have the transfer comparable services plan in place. And many times the students are undergoing evaluations, so there's a little bit of a delay in writing an annual IEP and finalizing it. How do we correct like the LRE placement, or that's primarily the ones I've seen is it's the LRE placement that's none in those cases if they don't have a finalized IEP before the submission date.
Let me ask this question, Alana. Is there a placement statement on the transfer comp service? Because I think that's what's happening. When you look into the system, you see the LRE or the placement statement there, but the placement tile itself is missing, and that's what's triggering the none. So you'd have to follow the same steps that's on the table 4 to get the corrected LRE to display for the reports.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. I think I got a little lost in the comments. Team, am I missing anything? Sonia, all students on transfer prompt services at child count date have to have the added step of the LRE placement. Yes, yes. That just goes to the question that Alana asked. When the transfer comp status services is being implemented, you have to make sure that they also include the tile for the placement. I don't know the correct lingo for that process, Sherry. So if you could help me articulate what the correct terminology is when they're completing the transfer comp services and adding that placement tile. I don't know if we still have Nick or not.
Nick
But if
had to
you,
jump off. Yeah,
okay, okay,
he's probably the ticket. If you've got specific questions, follow Zendesk. But the
okay.
big thing is to remember to do it in the placement tile first before finalizing that comp services statement. So you should be able to go by the instructions in the article, but if you have any trouble, just file a ticket.
Someone provided this in the link. Questions on the transfer comp services. Looks like we covered them all. Once again, if anybody have any additional questions, I'm going to hang on. It's about 11:13. I'm going to hang on for a few minutes just to see if anyone else has any additional questions. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to work out. What am I thinking about? To email us at the Special Education Services at ed.sc.gov email folder, and someone will be in touch with you. We want you to know that we appreciate you. We know that this has been difficult and it's been challenging. It's a learning curve from what we are accustomed to doing and how we're accustomed to doing it. We will make it through just one day at a time, one report at a time. We will make it through. So hang in there with us, bear with us as we transition through data collection and reporting. Thank you.
Hey, Carolyn.
Yes, okay.
Hey, this is George in Barnwell County School District. How you doing?
Doing good, doing good.
I had a follow-up question. Andrea and Sherry did a great job answering my question about indicator 12
Mhm.
for that.